She was his bride, only on paper, but after one night, the millionaire refused to let her go. The early October sun was shining gently over the Holston vineyard. The grapevines were full of dark purple grapes called Cabernet Sauvignon. They were almost ready to be picked. Celeste Holston stood between the rows of vines. Her hands were stained purple because she was checking if the grapes were sweet enough. Celeste was only 27 years old, but she looked like someone who had been through many hard times. "Just a few more days," she whispered, rolling a grape between her fingers. The morning dew sparkled on the leaves like tiny diamonds. Everything looked beautiful, but the truth was that the vineyard was in big trouble. Inside the old farmhouse, which had been in Celeste's family for many years, lots of bills were lying on the kitchen table. They looked like fallen autumn leaves. Many of the bills had red letters saying "Final Notice." One of the letters was from the bank. It said they were going to take the house and land away if the family couldn't pay the money soon. Celeste's hands were shaking as she made coffee. She looked out the window and saw her father, Gideon, sitting in his wheelchair on the porch. He had a stroke and couldn't walk or talk well anymore. He used to be a strong man who worked in the vineyard every day. Now he just sat and watched. "Good morning, Dad," Celeste said, carrying 2 cups of coffee outside. The stroke and the hospital bills had made everything harder. Before that, there had already been bad harvests and her mother's long sickness with cancer. The family had no more money left. "The grapes look good," Gideon said slowly, using the hand he could still move. "Your mom would say they're singing." Celeste's heart hurt when he said that. Her mom, Sarah Holston, was the soul of the vineyard. She turned the little farm into a famous place. She had passed away 3 years ago, but Celeste could steal her everywhere. "She always knew," Gideon quietly. "I should have told you about the debts." "Don't," Celeste said, putting her hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out." Her father had borrowed a lot of money during her mom's sickness to keep the vineyard running. Now, they owed almost $500,000, and they had to pay it very soon. Just then, they heard a car coming. A shiny black Tesla drove up the dirt road. It looked very fancy and didn't belong there with the old tractors and tools. A tall man stepped out. He wore a neat, dark gray suit. He looked like someone from a city, not from the countryside. "Miss Holston," he said loudly, "I'm Dorian Hale. We talked on the phone." Celeste stood up straight, suddenly noticing her grape-stained hands and old jeans. "Mr. Hale, you're early." Dorian Hale was 33 years old and already rich. He made big businesses and was working on new fancy hotels that were good for the planet. He wanted to buy their land for one of his resorts. "I like to see land in the morning," he said, looking around the vineyard with sharp eyes. "Shall we talk inside?" Inside her father's old office, Celeste listened while Dorian talked about his big idea. He had a plan to build solar-powered homes and swimming pools. The money he offered could pay all their bills and still leave some left. But there was a big problem. If they took the money, the vineyard would be destroyed. "This land hasn't made money for years," Dorian said, showing her pictures. "My resort will make jobs and bring visitors." "This isn't just land," Celeste said with tears in her eyes. "Every vine has a story. My great-grandfather planted grapes here during the Great Depression. My mother made our famous wine in that cellar. We're not selling." Dorian didn't say anything, but something in his eyes changed. "Miss Holston, I know everything. You only have 6 months left before the bank takes this place. Your dad's hospital bills alone are none of your business," Celeste said, standing up. "What if I told you there was another way?" Dorian asked. "I'm listening," Celeste said slowly. "Marriage," he said. The word felt heavy. "A pretend marriage," he added, "just for 1 year. No strings, just a contract." Celeste laughed but stopped when she saw he was serious. "You're joking." "I'm being smart," Dorian said. He took off his tie a little, finally showing a crack in his perfect look. My grandma is very sick. She owns 40% of my company. If she gives her support to my cousin Silas, he'll take over the company. Everything I've built will be gone. And what does that have to do with getting married? Celeste asked. My grandma wants to see me married to someone kind, someone who could make me seem more human. She thinks Silas would ruin all the good things our company does. And she's right. Celeste sat down, confused. So you want to fake a marriage so you don't lose your company. And in return? In return, Dorian said calmly, I'll pay off your debt, give you money to fix the vineyard, and you get to keep your home. He handed her the papers. Take 24 hours to think about it. That night, Celeste sat in the wine cellar. It was dark and quiet, but she felt her mother's spirit there. She looked at a bottle of wine, her mom's last one before she got sick. What would you do, Mom? Celeste whispered. Would you marry a stranger to save your dream? She thought about her mom's words. Sometimes the hardest choices are the only ones worth making. The next morning, Celeste stood at Dorian's office door. She held the contract. Her heart was beating fast, but her hand was steady. The deal was clear, 1 year of marriage. They would pretend to be a couple. No kisses, no sharing rooms. He would pay $3 million to help the vineyard. They had a small wedding at City Hall. Celeste wore a plain white dress and her mother's gold locket. Dorian's grandma was happy, even though she watched through a video call. She didn't seem to notice that they never held hands. That night, Celeste stood in her childhood bedroom. It was now her room again. She looked out the window and saw Dorian in the garden talking on the phone. He was her husband now, on paper at least. Just 1 year, she told herself, holding her mother's locket. 1 year to save everything. But something inside her whispered that this marriage might change more than just the vineyard's future. Down the hall, Dorian took off his tie and stared out at the vineyard. He had done it, got his grandma's blessing, and saved his company. Everything was going as planned. But why did he feel so sad when he saw Celeste crying quietly during the wedding? The contract was between them like a wall, but some feelings don't follow rules. The first month of their marriage was like a slow dance. They stayed polite and far apart. In the mornings, they would nod at each other at breakfast. Celeste read reports about grapes. Dorian read money news on his tablet. They only talked when needed. The Napa Valley wine auction is next weekend, Dorian said one morning. My grandma wants us there. Celeste paused. Her coffee almost spilled. She hadn't gone to that auction since her mother died. It had been her mother's favorite event. We need to look like a real couple, Dorian said. I had a dress sent for you. The dress was dark red silk and looked very expensive. Celeste stood in front of the mirror. She didn't recognize the lady in the mirror. She looked fancy, not like someone who worked with grapes. At the auction, they acted like a couple. Dorian gently touched her back. Celeste smiled and laughed. They told a fake story about how Dorian came to see vineyards and fell in love with her instead. How could I resist? Dorian would say, his eyes looking soft. She's as special as her wine. But when no one was looking, they stayed apart. Celeste worked in the vineyard. Dorian stayed in his office. Their first real fight came when they argued about picking the grapes. You can't wait, Dorian said, showing her weather maps. If it gets cold too early, we'll lose everything. Wine isn't made by looking at numbers, Celeste shouted. These grapes need 1 more week. My mom taught me. Your mom's ways lost money for 3 years, Dorian said. He regretted it the moment the words left his mouth. Get out, Celeste whispered. You may own part of this vineyard now, but you don't know anything about wine. That night, a big storm came. The lights went out. Everything was dark. Celeste was in the wine cellar checking the barrels. Great, she muttered, turning on her phone flashlight. Then she saw something move near the stairs. It's just me, said a voice. Dorian's voice came from the dark. The backup lights stopped working, he said. I came to see if you were down here. I know my way around my own basement. I'm here, Celeste answered. Her voice was stiff, but it shook a little as loud thunder crashed above them. Dorian turned on his flashlight. His light joined Celeste's, and together they lit up the space between them. I'm sorry about what I said earlier about your mom, Dorian said. Celeste didn't look at him. She kept herself busy checking the temperature of the wine barrels. She tried not to think about how the storm outside made the old basement feel smaller and even more quiet. You didn't know, she said. She believed that good wine needs time. It's not just about numbers and charts. Tell me about her, Dorian said quietly. They were both surprised by his words. Maybe it was the darkness. Maybe it was the storm. Or maybe Celeste was just tired of holding all her sad feelings inside. She started talking. She told Dorian about her mom, Sarah Holston. Sarah had a very special way of tasting wine. She could taste a wine and say what kind of grapes were used and even what kind of soil the grapes had grown in. She used to sing to the grapevines while she worked, saying that happy grapes made better wine. Then cancer took away her voice first. Celeste whispered, but she still came down here. She touched the barrels and wrote notes until she couldn't even hold a pen anymore. Dorian didn't speak, but his face changed. He was no longer just a business partner. Now he was someone who was quietly sharing her sadness. Your turn, Celeste said, wiping her eyes. Tell me something real about you. There was a long silence. Celeste thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he finally said, I wanted to be an architect. What happened? She asked. My father happened, Dorian said with a sad laugh. In my family, Hale men build businesses, not buildings. I got accepted into 3 schools for architecture, but my dad threw the letters into the fire and gave me an application for Harvard Business School instead. Celeste looked at him in the dim light. Do you still want to design buildings? Sometimes I draw, Dorian said. Homes, hotels, places that make people feel something. He stopped for a second. The eco-resort I suggested for your land, I designed it myself. Not that it matters anymore. Show me, Celeste said. Dorian hesitated, then took out his phone. He found the drawings and showed them to her. As he talked about his idea, he explained how he wanted to use earth-friendly materials and make buildings that fit with the land. Celeste saw a different Dorian as he spoke. He was excited and real. His usual serious face softened, and she could hear the love he had for design. It's beautiful, Celeste said, looking at the pictures. Different from what I thought. What did you think? Dorian asked. I thought it would be just boring luxury rooms, but this respects the land. They looked at each other. Something quiet and new passed between them. Just then, the storm knocked out their flashlights, and they were left in total darkness. Don't move, Dorian said. There's a box of candles by the stairs. Second shelf, behind the 2018 Merlot, Celeste said with a small smile. They found the candles together. Their fingers touched in the dark. When they lit the candle, soft shadows danced on the walls, making the old basement feel like a magical place. We should go upstairs, Dorian said, but neither of them moved. Celeste reached for a bottle. This is from my mom's last harvest. I've been saving it. I think now is the right time to open it. Are you sure? Dorian asked. She'd want it to be shared with someone who understands how to create something meaningful, Celeste said. She poured 2 glasses and handed one to Dorian. They sat together in the candlelight and tasted the last wine her mother ever made. Outside, the storm still roared, but inside, they talked about buildings and wine, about dreams and choices. For the first time, they weren't just work partners. They were 2 people sharing their hearts and stories in a quiet, candlelit room. When the power came back on, hours later, something between them had changed. The wall they had built between them had small cracks now, and through those cracks, something new had started to grow. The next morning, Celeste found a weather report on her desk. It proved that she was right to delay the grape picking. In the corner, Dorian had written a note in his handwriting. Your mother taught you well. And Dorian, back in his office, kept looking out the window. He watched Celeste walking through the vineyard, moving gracefully between the vines. For the first time, he wondered if his grandmother had been right when she said he needed to find someone who could bring out the human side of him. The walls were still there, but something underneath had shifted. Like the best wine, something new was slowly growing. The next day, Dorian surprised Celeste. When she came downstairs, he was already dressed in casual clothes, waiting by the kitchen door. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, handing her a mug of coffee made just the way she liked it. "I should learn more about how things work here," he said. That became their morning routine. They walked the rows of grapes together every day. Celeste showed him the signs she looked for: the color of the leaves, the feel of the grapes, the health of the soil. Dorian listened carefully and asked good questions. "You're different out here," Celeste said one morning as he bent down to look at a bunch of grapes. "This place feels calm," Dorian said. "Everything has its own time and reason." Soon their walks turned into real teamwork. Dorian was good at money and business. Celeste was great at making wine. They worked together better than they thought they would. When Celeste talked about going fully organic, Dorian spent a weekend learning about special help for eco-farms. When he said they should update their shipping system, Celeste showed him how she had built strong friendships with small stores. "We make a good team," Celeste said one day after a meeting. Dorian smiled, and Celeste's heart skipped a beat. Then came a big event, the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. It was the first time they went to something together after the wine auction. Dorian helped Celeste into the car, and his hands stayed on her back a little longer than usual. Her green dress, which Dorian had picked out, got many compliments, but she only cared about the way Dorian's eyes looked when she walked down the stairs. At the gala, they danced. It felt easy and real. "Everyone's watching us," Celeste said. "Let them," Dorian replied. "You're beautiful tonight." "Just tonight?" she teased. "You're always beautiful," Dorian said. "But tonight, you're glowing." Just then someone tapped Dorian's shoulder. "Dorian, darling, what a surprise!" The woman was very pretty, tall and fancy. She wore a dress that probably cost more than all of Celeste's clothes, but it was Dorian's face that made Celeste feel tight inside. He looked stiff again. "Taliev," he said in a cold voice. "I didn't know you were back." "Paris got boring," Taliev laughed. She looked at Celeste with unfriendly eyes. "When I heard about your surprise wedding, I had to come back. Aren't you going to introduce me?" "Celeste, this is Taliev Carter. Taliev, my wife, Celeste Holston Hale." "Charmed," Taliev said, smiling in a mean way. "She's not your usual type. But then this marriage did happen so fast, didn't it?" Before anyone could say more, Taliev walked away. "Your ex?" Celeste asked. "My ex-fiancée," Dorian said. "It was a business deal. It ended badly." "Like our deal," Celeste said, feeling sad. "No, not like this," Dorian said quickly, but the moment was ruined. Taliev started showing up more and more. At parties, meetings, even at the vineyard. Celeste began to feel unsure of herself. Then, one day, her dad, Gideon Holston, found the marriage contract. He came down the cellar ramp in his wheelchair. "How could you?" he said, shaking the papers. "You sold yourself for this. Your mother would be ashamed." Celeste felt like his words had hit her. She ran to the old stone bench deep in the garden, hidden by wild roses. That's where Dorian found her. "Your dad called me," he said, sitting beside her. "Did you know?" Celeste said. "This was my mom's favorite spot when things were hard." She said the roses reminded her that even thorny plants can grow beautiful flowers. Dorian was quiet for a while. Then he gently held her hand. "Your dad is wrong," he said. "Your mom would be proud of you. You're strong. You saved what she built." "Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning," Celeste said, "trying to be perfect, the perfect daughter, the perfect winemaker, the perfect fake wife." "You don't have to be perfect," Dorian said softly. "Just be you. That's more than enough." She looked at him and saw not the cold businessman, but someone who had become very important to her. Their faces were close, their breaths warm in the evening air. Dorian, Celeste whispered. He leaned in and kissed her gently. At first it was soft, but soon it became deeper and full of truth. Celeste's hands held his hair as he pulled her closer. They forgot the contract. They forgot the rules. In that kiss, they found something real. When they pulled away, both out of breath, they remembered. Their deal said no love, no real relationship. Their feelings could break everything. We should talk about this, Dorian said. Tomorrow, Celeste replied, touching his cheek. Tonight, can we just be? He didn't use words. Instead, he kissed her again. This time, it was soft and gentle, like a sweet promise. Up in the sky, the first stars twinkled. They quietly watched the special moment when work turned into love, when rules turned into hearts, and when two people who had built walls around themselves started to take those walls down. Later that night, they walked back to the house, holding hands. They both knew something big had changed between them. The question was, could their new feelings stay strong, even with all the hard things that might come next? Talia's teasing smiles, Gideon's angry looks, and their own fears might break the new happiness they had found. But for now, under the soft night sky of the vineyard, they believed in something special. They believed that some promises were meant to be broken, and some business deals were meant to become love. Sorry to interrupt, but I noticed that many of you watch our stories until the very end. But forget to subscribe. If you're enjoying the story, please press the subscribe button. It helps more people find our stories and feel the love. Thank you. Now back to the story. The weeks after their first kiss changed everything at the Halston house. They still had separate bedrooms, but their lives started to mix in sweet little ways. Celeste would wake up and find warm coffee and fresh croissants waiting for her. Dorian had gotten up early to go to her favorite bakery in town. She started putting his evening drink in the study, with kind little notes about the wine tastings they had done that day. Their morning walks through the grape fields became longer. They didn't just talk about the vineyard anymore. Dorian began to tell her about his childhood, things he had hidden for years. Celeste shared her worries too, how she was scared of not being good enough to carry on her mother's dream. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. They just walked, holding hands, feeling calm, and watching the fog lift from the vines. One evening, Celeste was reading the grape picking schedule when yummy smells came from the kitchen. She followed her nose and found Dorian in there. His fancy suit jacket was off, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up. He was trying to cook. "Don't laugh," he said when he saw her smiling. "I found your mom's recipe book. The chicken might be a little different." "You're cooking?" Celeste stepped closer, her heart feeling warm. This strong businessman was now trying to measure herbs. "You said you missed your mom's cocoa," he said quietly. "I thought maybe I could try something special." Celeste hugged him from behind, her cheek resting on his back. "It's perfect," she whispered. The chicken wasn't very good. It was actually pretty bad. So they ordered pizza instead. They sat on the kitchen floor, eating and laughing as Dorian made silly jokes about his cooking disaster. Celeste laughed so hard that her belly hurt. "I didn't know you could be funny," she said, wiping her happy tears. Dorian smiled. "I never had anyone I wanted to make laugh before." That night, their kisses were filled with joy. The deal that brought them together didn't matter anymore. They had found something real. But happy times don't always last forever. The trouble came on a cold morning in late fall. Dorian was in his office when Silas Hale suddenly came to visit. Silas always wore a sly smile. "Wow," he said, looking out the window where Celeste was giving a vineyard tour. "You've made quite the happy home, cousin. But it's not real, is it? Just look at the timing of the contracts." Dorian didn't show his feelings, but under the desk, his hands were tight fists. "What do you want, Silas?" Silas sat down without asking. "I want what should be mine. Grandma's shares. I'm part of the Hale family, too. You only got them because of that fake marriage." Dorian's voice stayed calm. You don't have proof. Silas smiled wider. Are you sure? Papers like that tend to pop up. Imagine the gossip. Dorian Hale paid a woman to be his wife, and poor Celeste sold herself to save her vineyard. Dorian's voice turned cold. Leave her out of this. Oh no, said Silas. She's the key to it all. I've seen how you look at her. You really fell for her, didn't you? How sweet. The powerful Dorian in love with a grape farmer's daughter. Dorian didn't move. Here's my offer, Silas said. Step down as the company boss. Tell everyone I should take your place. Do that, and I won't tell the world your little love story. Silas stood up and smoothed his coat. You have 48 hours. Oh, and by the way, your chicken smells burnt. After Silas left, Dorian sat still. In his safe were the contract papers that had started it all. They looked harmless, but they could ruin everything. They could hurt Celeste's name, destroy her father's pride, and damage the vineyard. And worst of all, they could expose their private love to everyone. That evening, Celeste came into the office. The sky was dark. Dorian, dinner's ready, she said, and you promised to try the new Merlot wine. She paused. He looked sad. What's wrong? She asked. He couldn't face her. We have to stop this. Stop what? She asked. Us. Yes, he said. This is getting too hard. We need to follow the contract rules. Celeste stepped back like she had been hurt. Hard? Is that what you call what's happening between us? It was a mistake, he said coldly. We have a deal, nothing more. Look at me and say that, she whispered. He looked into her eyes and saw tears. It nearly broke him. But Silas's threats echoed in his mind. If their love became public, Celeste would be humiliated. Her dad would be heartbroken. Everything she worked for would be destroyed. So Dorian stayed strong. The contract says no falling in love, he said firmly. We should respect that. Celeste let out a sad laugh. You can hide behind those rules, Dorian, but we both know what's real. This marriage was never real, he said. Then why does ending it feel like dying? She asked. Her voice was full of pain. It hurt him more than anything. But he nodded. Better to stop now than watch your world fall apart later. I'll move to the guest house. We'll pretend in public until the year is up. Celeste stood still for a moment. Then she said quietly, You know what's funny? I thought you were different. I thought under your business face there was someone brave enough to choose love. She took off the simple ring they had picked together and placed it on his desk. I was wrong. Then she left. Dorian sat in the dark. The ring on the desk glowed in the lamplight. Outside, he heard Celeste start her truck and drive away into the night. For the first time since his father had burned his college acceptance letters, Dorian cried. The next days were hard. They acted like everything was fine in public. They went to charity events, business dinners, and fancy meetings. Celeste smiled and touched his arm just enough to seem happy. But her eyes looked sad, and her smiles didn't reach her heart. Dorian worked day and night. He stayed late at the office, took calls from other countries at sunrise, anything to stay busy. He couldn't bear to go home and see Celeste in the vineyard, knowing he couldn't walk beside her anymore. That year's wine was amazing. Celeste's smart ideas and Dorian's money had made something very special. People were already saying their wines were the best ever. The vineyard was doing great, but their hearts were breaking. One evening, Dorian was walking past the wine cellar when he heard Celeste talking. She was giving a tour to some people who wrote about wine. Her voice was full of excitement and love as she explained how they made their special wine. Wine is about change, she said. You take something simple, and with time and patience, it becomes something amazing. But you have to be brave. You have to believe it will work, even when it seems hard. Dorian leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He realized Celeste wasn't just talking about wine. She was talking about them, about their relationship. They were both scared to love each other fully. In his office in San Francisco, Silas was probably already happy he had won. But Dorian now knew he had made a big mistake. He thought he was protecting Celeste by pushing her away, but he was actually hurting her and himself. He forgot everything Celeste taught him about being brave and true to himself. He wondered, could I still fix this before it's too late? Then, one misty morning in November, a letter arrived in a thick cream-colored envelope. It had the Hale family symbol on it. Dorian's grandmother had passed away quietly in her sleep. Now her final words were waiting for him in his office. Dorian's hands shook a little as he opened the letter. It was rare for him to show feelings, but this was different. Inside the envelope was not just a letter, but photos too. Pictures of him and Celeste from the past year, walking in the vineyard early in the morning, laughing at events, looking at each other when they thought no one saw them. The letter was written in his grandmother's fancy handwriting. "My dearest Dorian," it began. "By the time you read this, I'll be gone, but I hope to leave you with one last lesson. I knew about your contract marriage with Celeste. Did you really think your old grandma wouldn't look into it? But what you didn't know, my dear boy, was that I never wanted you to just get married. I wanted you to believe in someone again, to find someone who could show you that life isn't just about business meetings and numbers. I watched you this year. You've been smiling more, sketching buildings again, and your eyes always follow Celeste when she walks in the room. That's not pretending, Dorian. That's love. You might be wondering about the company and the inheritance. Well, here's a surprise. I gave you my shares 6 months ago, the moment I saw you laughing while Celeste teased you about your dancing at the summer party. You never needed a wife to stay in the company. You needed love to fill your heart. Don't let fear steal your happiness. I didn't raise a coward. With love, grandmother. P.S. That girl loves you too, you fool. Fix this." Dorian dropped the letter. He was shocked. All this time he had been afraid of losing things, but there had been no danger at all. He had listened to Silas's lies. He had chosen safety over love. "Oh no," Dorian whispered. "What have I done?" He jumped into his car and drove to the vineyard as fast as he could. His mind was full of things he needed to say to Celeste. He wanted to say sorry, to tell her the truth, and to stop hiding. When he got there, the vineyard was busy. Cars were parked everywhere, and a crowd stood near the tasting room. Gideon Holston, Celeste's dad, was standing with a cane and speaking to everyone. "And so, I'm happy to share that Holston Wines is growing. Our newest wine is a big success." Then Dorian saw Celeste. She was wearing a beautiful deep blue dress. She looked like sunshine in the fall. She was happy and proud. This was her big moment. Dorian didn't want to mess it up. But then he remembered what his grandmother said. No more being afraid. "Celeste!" he called loudly. Everyone turned to look at him. Celeste stopped talking. She looked right at him. "Dorian, what are you?" "I love you," he shouted so everyone could hear. "I've been such a fool, and I don't care who knows it." Dorian walked through the crowd. "Yes, the marriage started as a contract, but everything after, the morning walks, the laughs, every moment I fell in love with your heart, that was all real." Celeste looked shocked. She was holding her clipboard but forgot all about it. "Dorian," she whispered, "there are reporters here." "Good," he said, holding her hands. "Let them write about this. I, Dorian Hale, am deeply and totally in love with Celeste Hull, not because of a contract, but because she taught me that love is something you feel, not something you control, like wine, like us." Celeste had tears in her eyes. "You're ruining my business speech," she said, her voice shaking. "I'll help you fix it," Dorian said, smiling. "I'll help you with everything for the rest of our lives." He got down on one knee and pulled out the ring Celeste had left behind the night they broke up. "Marry me, Celeste, not for business, not for show, but because I want to wake up next to you. I want to burn dinner together and laugh when it goes wrong. I want you, forever." The crowd was completely quiet. No one cared about business anymore. Even Gideon Holston had tears in his eyes. Celeste gently touched Dorian's face. "You hurt me." I know, Dorian said. I was trying to protect you from Silas, but really I was just scared. My grandmother's letter showed me that. I'm not scared anymore. Silas doesn't matter. You do. Will you marry me? For real this time? Celeste looked at the ring, then at Dorian's face. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was just full of love and hope. On one condition, she said, anything. You have to help me explain to everyone why the big boss just interrupted my important wine talk with a marriage proposal. Dorian laughed and stood up, pulling her into his arms. I think they'll understand, he said. Love is the best plan ever. Everyone clapped and cheered. Even the serious business people were smiling. Reporters called it the wine country love story of the year. But Dorian and Celeste didn't care about the news. They were busy planning a real wedding. 2 years later, the sun was setting over the vineyard in purple and gold. Guests came for the fall celebration. Lanterns hung from the vines, and tables were full of yummy food and Holsten wines. Try this one, Celeste said, handing Dorian a glass of wine. Her other hand rested on her belly. She was going to have a baby in the spring. It's from the vines we planted together, she said. Dorian took a sip and smiled. It's amazing, just like you. He gave her a gentle kiss. The vineyard had become more successful than ever. Their special mix of old winemaking and new ideas had worked. Celeste's name on the label was now their most popular line. Each bottle told their love story. Gideon Holsten raised his glass. To my daughter and son-in-law, they showed us that the best wines come from unexpected mixes. Dorian hugged Celeste. She wore a locket with 2 pictures, one of her parents and one of her and Dorian from their wedding. They were running through the vineyard, laughing with flower petals flying. Are you happy? Dorian asked. Celeste looked up at him, eyes glowing. Remember when you said you wanted to build places that made people feel something? You did it. No, Dorian said, smiling. We did it. Later that night, after the guests left, they walked their favorite path through the vines. The air was cool, and an owl hooted softly in the distance. I have something to show you, Dorian said. He took her to his study. On his desk were drawings of a nursery, a room for the baby. He had put their love story into every part of the design. Celeste looked at the pictures and smiled. It's perfect. I was thinking, Dorian said, hugging her, if the baby's a girl, what about the name Sarah? Celeste's eyes sparkled with happy tears. She nodded. Above them, stars twinkled like diamonds in the sky. Their love had started as a business deal, but it turned into something beautiful and real. In the wine cellar below, a special wine was aging. The bottles were marked the contract. They would open one bottle on their child's birthday to tell the story of how love, just like wine, can grow from the most surprising beginnings. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.